I'm sure you've heard the story. It's been told several times, and there's been several versions of it. Kathy Shank, she's really kind of an unsung hero. Would Kathy Shank, who we just are constantly hearing about, would that be an unsung hero? We weren't paying her. We weren't giving her benefits. She was just doing it voluntarily. Is that because we accused him of paying Kathy Shank? I still think that you were paying Kathy Shank, but what do I know? Sometimes she would bring us food and snacks. What's a quintessential grandmother? Okay, she would just take care of us, and she found the tip. So she took care of you by finding the tip. Mm-hmm. She was going through a box and refiling and organizing things, and she came across something. So she commonly did this, and yet she'd never come across this thing before. She came across a suspect that was on the trail that day. Kathy Shank, who regularly and often refiled and reorganized things, came across something that she literally never came across before during all the previous instances of her refiling and reorganizing things. And she came across a suspect that was on the trail that day. A suspect?
Wrong.
Wasn't a suspect. He was never a suspect, actually. He was a helpful eyewitness, a member of the public, a witness. Tony called Steve, and then, he's pretty quick. Sure was. It sure was. In fact, it was impossibly quick. This is 100,000% true what Kat is saying here. And not just is it true, it's inexcusably bad how many tips they ignored. And it's interesting that Nick makes a point to say, we only ignored tips that talked about Sasquatch and aliens. No, you ignored tips that were sent to you multiple times by genuinely concerned and frantic people with really good tips, actually. Probably one of the killers or participants is in there somewhere. It was pretty quick and said, hey, we got this. Holy cow, So they found a non-suspicious tip from a witness. Rick was the witness. As soon as they found it, they had done zero due diligence or investigating into it. They didn't even know if Rick owned a gun at this point, right? And immediately they said, holy cow, this is the missing piece. Do you know what that's called? Confirmation bias, desperation, tunnel vision. Fuck, Tony Liggett is losing by a landslide to this independent candidate for sheriff. And soon, if he wins, he's going to be the one in here looking at this fucking mess of an investigation that we've totally let just... She found someone for you to pin charges on after Kagan made an ass out of ISP. They still had minnows in their boots from searching the Wabash. They sure did. They were still sloshing around in their boots from that search. Mount Everest of conspiracy theories is your missing rediscovered tip. They did a Mount Everest. Big things are coming after the debate. That debate was 48, 72 hours after this tip was found. We've said it. The second that tip was found, Rick Allen was convicted. He was bridge guy the very second that they found out. Oh my God, wait. There's one more person whom we might be able. And how lucky for us. He's a nobody. He doesn't have any deep ties. He doesn't have a criminal record, though. That doesn't matter. We'll just make shit up and give it to the media to report on. But he's too short. That's okay. Fortunately, we fucked with the video from day one. So there's no way to tell how tall Bridge Guy is. This is so fucking sad.
Organizing things as she commonly did. And she came across something that she hadn't seen before. And she came across a suspect that was on the trail that day. And she hadn't known about this guy. And so she took it to Tony. Tony Liggett called Steve Mullen. It was pretty quick and said, hey, we got this. Holy cow, this may be the missing piece. And we just ran with it. It's not really a secret. Everybody knows the story, how it happened. So God bless her and thank God for her, because we may not be here today, but for her. Somebody wrote cleared on the tip. We don't know who. It was on the bottom of the tip sheet. And I think that's why, I don't know, because I don't know when it got misfiled or how it got misfiled. I wasn't there. But that's why we believe that it got filed in the cleared section, because somebody had written that on there, so nobody did any further investigation on it.
Well, that's reassuring. That's really reassuring. It said cleared on it, so we just were like, well, that's good enough. It was that easy. It happened that fast. And Rick was right. Literally, the second that they got his name and went and talked to him, and he had the audacity to say, it's over. It's over. It's already done. Why did that comment piss Pullman off so much? It's because it was true, and he knew it was true, and he got defensive. He literally says she had never seen this before. So how involved was she in your motherfucking investigation then? She had never seen it before? She wasn't supposed to be reading shit, I thought. She didn't recognize his name? So? What the fuck does that have to do with anything? She's irrelevant. But Kathy Shank is the one that made the determination that because she had never seen it before, or because she didn't know who he was, or because she decided that that was suspicious, it was done. They decided the second they found it that that was the bridge guy.
She came across something that she hadn't seen before, and she came across
Wrong.
She had seen it before, though.
a suspect that was on the trail that day. And
He wasn't a suspect ever until Kathy Shank decided he was.
known about this guy. And so she took it to Tony Liggett.
Lots of lying happening, says Michael.
Tony Liggett called Steve Mullen, and it was pretty quick, and said, hey, we got this.
Sure
Holy
was.
cow, this is the missing piece. And
Holy cow, this may be the missing piece. Listen to them. They sound like a bunch of fucking idiots. They sound like they sound desperate. How desperate do you have to be when all you have is a piece of paper that you're like, oh, I haven't seen this before. And it has a witness narrative and an interview where Dan Doolin apparently himself didn't see any reason to follow up with this guy after talking to him. There was nothing suspicious about that tip from 2017. But they found it and decided immediately that they were going to make it like that was it. This is the missing piece. You want to talk about bias and tunnel vision and echo chambers and boundary issues? Like,
there's this common theme out there that it's because it was misfiled under Richard Allen White.
that's a common theme because that's literally what y'all said at the beginning before you decided on this version of the story. You were the ones that put that misconception out there. You gave it to your friends, the podcasters, and you had them run with it. And now you're landed on this version.
That's not the case. Somebody wrote cleared on the tip. We don't know who. It was on the bottom of the tip sheet.
Someone wrote cleared on the tip sheet. Okay, well, what about the entry in Orion? What did that say? Did that entry in Orion say cleared? And if it didn't, why didn't anybody revisit it in 5 years to follow up on it or to cover it?
And I think that's why, because I don't know when it got misfiled or how it got misfiled. I wasn't there, but that's why we believe that it got filed. And
you also weren't there at the bridge on the 13th. We still expect you to have a pretty good grasp on what occurred there that day. You are the prosecutor, and you don't have an intimate knowledge and understanding of the evidence from the early days of the investigation? Oof. I believe you. I believe you.
in the cleared section because somebody had written that on there, so nobody did any further investigation on it.
Where is it? Show us all of that. Prove that that is true and accurate.
She came across it in
Prove that Kathy Shank came across it and had never seen it before September 2022, because that's actually a lie.
2022 and said, look, I don't know the further investigation on this guy. I don't recognize the name. We need to look into this.
Kathy said, did he just say Kathy said that? I don't recognize the name. We need to look into this. So because Kathy Shank didn't recognize his name, he was fair game. Oh, he'll do. I know that I sound like an Everest conspiracy theorist right now, but Kathy Shank's own daughter wrote on Twitter, he was an outsider. He's not one of us. Get out of our town, you evil man. He talketh too much. So you're unpaid, untrained, unqualified, non-sworn until you come out and say it yourself. She wasn't working for you in any kind of official law enforcement capacity, despite signing her name investigator in Orion. Unpaid, but sometimes she would bring us snacks. Across it in 2022 and said, I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about him.
So nobody did any further investigation on it. And she came across it in 2022 and said, look, I don't know the further investigation on this guy. I don't recognize the name. We need to look into this.
So Kathy Shank was the decision maker, right? Kathy Shank gave the directive and the determination. Because Kathy Shank, Officer Shank, didn't recognize his name and didn't know who he was, allegedly, or because Kathy Shank wasn't abreast of the details of the investigation into this. Is she just a grandma volunteering, or is she your lead investigator calling the shots because she's the fucking queen of Carroll County?
When did you realize this really is the guy, though?
Immediately.
Did you think this really is Rich Guy?
Well, you got to realize by 2022, I've been in this since January of 18. And by 2022, I was probably the devil's advocate of the group and very skeptical.
Bullshit.
And saying, okay, well, I know it hit home for me when we got the lab results back for the firearm. Because I'll never forget where I was at that day, what I was doing. You have those moments in your life. My grandpa still talks about, he knows where he was at and what he was doing the day JFK was assassinated.
So the assassination of an innocent man is what yeah, you're right, Nick.
Those kind of things. And I'll just never forget where I was at or what I was doing when I got the phone call.
And what did the phone call say? So why did you wait a week then to arrest him? And why are you still claiming that you had no intention of arresting him that day? Once they arrested him based on a false match, then it basically becomes a cover up in a runaway train. Ran that train right off the fucking tracks and just there it went. Why didn't they write up the PCA? It was so convincing. We didn't even dream of arresting him, right? Pick a version of your truth and stick to it, because none of this makes any fucking sense.
So that for me was when it really hit. And for me, it was like, okay, this is the guy.
That's pathetic. That was the threshold. You're the skeptic of the group, and that was the threshold. Yeah. If he really was skeptical, then when they told him it was a match, it would not have been such an emotional event. Yeah. They all decided as soon as they found a name they didn't recognize or a lead they hadn't exhausted, that's when they decided it.
And we were on fall break, and we were in Tennessee at a water park. And it's a big indoor water park. And they have...
Wait, so he was out of town too? Weird.
And the phone was ringing, and it was ringing. Of course, I'm playing with them in the wave pool in the water.
One might say frantic. We got the bridge guy.
I was checking my phone every hour and a half because I knew that we had gathered stuff in the house. And I knew.
So you're already anticipating. Yeah. Checking my phone. So I'm checking my phone constantly, waiting for our confirmation bias to be confirmed. The test was literally made up. So yeah, they literally say whatever they wanted to say. Hey, make it fucking work.
Called Jerry Holman back.
So Jerry Holman's the one calling him over and over and over again. Jerry Holman's the one that gave the prosecutor the big news. The big news. We got him. Who exactly did Holman talk to before making an arrest? The janitor, right? Yeah. I'm gonna go talk to some folks, and because the only thing that occurred in the interrogation of Richard Allen that would switch them from no intention of arresting him to arrest him right fucking now and you're going away for the rest of your life and I'm gonna prove it, was he pissed Jerry Holman off. Hey, Jerry, how many times had Nick told you to prove it and you couldn't? I'm gonna fucking prove it. If fuckery is afoot, Holman is there. Of course I fired the bullet to match an unfired bullet. Work smarter, not harder.
I was talking, they're going to fly down and get me. I said, no. We ended up coming back a day.
What? Fly down to get you from Tennessee? Fly down and get you, and you waited another week to ask the man to come in to get his car. So you got really excited. So here's what it sounds like. Jerry Holman decided that this was the guy. He did it. They solved it. They got him. They got the bridge guy. And he was so excited. And he's like, we're going to come and get you. He was like so excited. And somebody went, whoa, 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 whoa. And then Jerry got pissed and was like, what do you mean, whoa, 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 whoa? It's him. We got him. And they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. So it was personal. The testing occurred between October 14th and October 19th. Yeah, Jerry thought he had him. And then somebody's were like, whoa, not enough yet. This is very illuminating. Rick was interviewed. So they waited an entire week.
Actually leaving early Saturday morning, like 4 of them to drive back so I could get back so we could get together probable cause. And so when we interviewed him the second time, we weren't even sure we were going to arrest him, but we wanted to have everything in order in case we did. And so I know I came back a day early to be able to get a briefing on that, to start to write together some kind of PC. Again, if you'd have said, oh, I lend my gun to my brother Joe, okay, let's go interview, but we'd be ready so that once we arrested him, you don't want to wait to draft these documents until afterwards.
You literally did. You actually violated the statute, first of all, but you waited because you didn't fucking have enough. You literally waited. You did wait.
We wanted to put together everything we had. So we put together the PC from the search warrant. We added this piece into it.
The pictures are identical. They're literally the same.
And then we were going to continue to add to it if we needed to. But we weren't until we talked to him, right? We had to check those.
We weren't sure until we talked to him, and he, unfortunately for us, really threw a wrench in our plan by being the most credible, innocent, honest, and unyielding suspect we've ever tried to do a read upon.
Had anybody else had your gun? Did you purchase?
I to my nothing, more nothing.
Just heard you purchase it off somebody else. Had anybody else had your ammo? Did you buy it off somebody else, or did you purchase it new? Is there any reason you would have been out in that area? You don't jump to a conclusion in something this serious. You've got to make.
Motherfucker, you jumped to a conclusion when your geriatric volunteer said, I don't recognize this fellow. And you said, we got him, French guy.
And so we weren't sure we were going to arrest him until after that second interview. It was in the moment. Jerry Holman came back and said, okay, what are we doing? I said, we've got enough now.
So yes, so Jerry said, sure, why not?
Enough meaning alibi. What did you have enough? What was enough?
Couple calls arrested.
So
Which was
you
what?
check.
Go ahead.
Lauren asked a good
Yeah,
question.
go ahead,
Lauren finally asked a really good question, and John interrupted her.
Lauren. What were the cause?
So we tied him. He was on trails that day.
Yes, with dozens of other people.
The witnesses we had didn't see anybody else on the trail that day.
But they also didn't see Rick Allen. So they did see people on the trails that day.
The witnesses we had gave a description that matched what he was wearing that day that he confirmed.
No and no.
He was on the trails during the time the girls were abducted and
Nope, sure as fuck wasn't.
murdered. We had a bullet tied to his gun that
Nope, you sure as fuck didn't.
I believe came from his gun.
Based on my knowledge, my belief. Well, Nick, I believe that you tried to get me arrested and almost got my dad shot in the face, but that's not enough for me to charge you and arrest you and convict you and sentence you to 130 years. Sometimes my belief is irrelevant.
Argue the science, but I believe in the science.
I believe in the science of made-up ballistics matching a fired round to an unfired round, but I don't believe in the science of the brain and organic changes that occur in the brain as a result of torture and prolonged solitary confinement. Oh, and I also don't believe that psychotic disorders are legitimate mental illnesses, but I believe in the bullet. Fucking loser.
There's no other explanation how that bullet had gotten there.
Except that it had been there probably for fucking months or even weeks or months or years, because the old man that lived on his property likes to fucking shoot deer with his fucking SIG for fun. There's no reason that a bullet would be in the dirt in rural Indiana on the property of a man who owns 200 firearms and who also lets people hunt on his property.
And so those were kind of the main, we had the time of the arrest. We tied him to the scene. He was in Delphi at the time. He was on the trails at the time. He matched the description of Bridge Guy. And then tying that bullet to the scene, that ties him directly to the crime.
He's like out of breath to defend this. Listen to him. He's like, no.
So those are the key pillars that we had at the time.
What are you talking about?
And they all three give a little bit different description of what that person's wearing. However, their description of his demeanor is all the same. And I think it's a better question. We, as attorneys, say witness statements sometimes are not the best evidence, because you can have three people see something in the exact same moment and describe it in three different ways. And it goes back to, I have taken a couple classes. It goes back onto how they were raised, what their beliefs are, what they find important. And John, you can talk on this more than I can.
And so you're right. That's why eyewitness accounts are never perfect.
Yeah.
They don't have to be perfect. I mean, they were close, right? But you point out something interesting, which is something I noticed right away in the probable cause statement myself, and that was the demeanor was the same. So you might have differences in terms of eyewitness accounts of what they're seeing and perceiving visually, but emotionally.
Oh, emotionally? What? Yeah. Hey, by the way, girls, don't trust your eyes. Don't trust your eyes. Don't trust your ears. Don't trust your senses. Trust your feelings. Trust your feelings.
They're all experiencing the same thing, which is this guy was on a mission, right? He was focused. He was not really noticing them. He's on a
mission to murder young girls, so he doesn't even notice the group of young girls? Huh?
a little bit aggressive, right? That was all consistent.
No one has ever described Richard Matthew Allen as being aggressive or hostile or unpleasant ever. In fact, even the fucking guards and staff at the Department of Corrections describe Richard Allen as pleasant, polite, accommodating, gentle, subdued. Never has anyone ever described that man this way. That is the opposite of his demeanor. Nobody thinks that Richard Allen is that person because he's not. So all of a sudden, what? He just he has a rapid and immediate personality change, and then he just switches right back to who he is and never experiences that again.
And that's what stuck out to me. the other thing is when you show them a picture of Bridge Guy, they say,
don't ever trust your lying eyes. You might see something that disproves the prosecution's narrative. He's actually explaining what a gaslight is. You can't trust your eyes or your ears or your nose or your brain. But you know what you can trust? Vibes.
say, yes, that's the guy I saw. They were all very confident about that, very clear. That's the guy
No,
I
they
saw.
weren't.
Along with Betsy Blair and Sarah Carball. And so, you know, they all were very.
Sarah Carball, #1 threat to pedestrians everywhere. Sarah Carball. That's upsetting. He was on a mission. All of those are consistent with somebody. Right. All of those things are consistent with someone going to the bridge with a mission. That's not consistent with somebody who's going to look at fish. Exactly. It's not consistent with Rick Allen. There you have it. The killer's on a mission. Therefore, they saw Richard Allen. And yet, according to the state's narrative and their case in chief, he killed the girls because he just got spooked and panicked. So was he on a mission or not? What was his mission then, if he wasn't intending on killing them, but he got spooked? What was the mission? Get the fuck out of my way. I hear there's a 30-pound car for this. Sounds like his mission was to loiter under the bridge. Your reality needs to be dictated to you by Nick McDickhead. You are defending a child killer. Right. But the prosecutor did a say-so. He said so. This is so embarrassing. He's trying to justify. I'm getting a little disoriented with the number of girls. So Rick saw 3. But the group of girls that he's trying to say is the same group were 4. But he's saying that, well, it was really 3 because one of them was so young. So you're admitting that you lied in the probable cause affidavit. Why would you say there were 3 if there were 4? That's not a thing. Imagine being so arrogant that you go on a public platform and perpetually say blatantly disprovable things. The 4 was 3 teenagers and 1 8-year-old. Go back to your statement, Lauren. I think it's important that because Rick says, yes, I see them. That confirms that he's the guy. He saw them, which means it corroborates that they saw Bridge Guy. They're like, y'all, look, 2 + 2 = 4. And we're all sitting here going, what the fuck are you talking about? There's literally no numbers anywhere. There is no 2. What are you talking about? They're like, well, Rick saw 3 girls, but the 4 girls saw a grumpy man, and Rick admits that he saw 3 girls, and so therefore the 4 girls saw Rick, and therefore Rick is Bridge Guy. That's literally what they're saying. And they confused the jury. They disoriented and confused the jury is what they did. Actually, I think that the confusing and confounding and inconsistent, all of the different eyewitness statements and testimony that they brought in, I don't think that helped Rick. I think it just, everyone was so confused that they were like, sure, okay, fine. Because that's what I do when Courtney, she is on top of it. She knows she's just a fucking encyclopedia record keeper. And sometimes she'll try and talk to me about the witnesses and the inconsistencies and the timeline. And I'm always like, whoa. And I'm like, wait, so who is that? I get disoriented. And I'm like, fine, it doesn't make sense. None of this makes any sense. He's doing an invisible imply. You need to actually prove it. Also, BG being the culprit is just an assumption, right? Notice that they didn't even call him a suspect for the first few days. They're like, let's wait and see if he comes forward and see what he saw. He might have seen something. And then when he didn't come forward and they're like, well, fuck. They're like, all right, that's it. Dude, they base all of their investigatory decisions on vibes and feels. They wanted the guy to come forward so they could interview him and he didn't. And they're like, fine, you're not going to come talk to us, motherfucker? You're the killer. Bridge Guy's the killer. Enemy #1, because we asked him nicely to come in and talk to us and tell us what he saw that day. And he didn't. So, fine. You're the killer then. That's literally like Jerry Holman saying, if you have information and you're scared, don't be scared. Come forward and we'll protect you. But if you have information and you're scared and you don't come forward with that information, then you're just as guilty as the killer. What? When have you ever seen the state get their conviction and feel the need to repeatedly justify it? That should tell an objective person enough. Children are invisible in Indiana. They did what they claimed the defense would do. They confused the jury. Yep. Projection. It's information overload and your brain won't accept it. Nick cried during his closing. That's literally the logic. The way that they presented everything was to confuse the person listening so they don't take the pertinent info in, right? They overwhelm them with irrelevant, insignificant details. And then the auxiliary cord plug, literally nothing else about the steps and the meters and the phone and the dissension and none of that really, they shouldn't have even fucking bothered with that. They should have said, look, regardless of what they're saying, the fact is there is no other explanation for this phenomenon. It would be unlikely, if not impossible, for just one incorrect read code. But for a plug-in and an unplug code, no. Somebody plugged something in and unplugged something into the phone that we're claiming was underneath the body of a dead girl. Hours after we're telling you that she was dead. And Richard Allen was asleep in bed with his wife. That's literally what they needed to... If they really wanted that to be all of their case, then that they should have just made that the thing that they focused on. But whatever, who cares? It wouldn't have mattered. Rick was convicted the day Kathy found his tip. We just decided that together because Nick told us. And we already knew that. Getting winded trying to make it sound like he's got this huge list of evidence, but he's just saying the same thing different ways, right? The worm slithered into the port. I really wouldn't have made a difference, which is so sad. Mm-hmm. And Rick knew it. He knew it. He literally knew it. He knew it so wholly that he told Kathy, don't worry about me. Get yourself a lawyer. I'll be fine. That sucks so bad. I hate these motherfuckers. He can't dazzle with brilliance. He baffled them with bullshit. Hi, Shell. The entire day log for Oberg to show them everything about ballistics and manufacturing of guns, and then never actually showing them the results of her analysis, and never even letting Rosie show the pictures. He had to just get them in closing. That was the only thing he could do. And notice that the juror said that they didn't put much weight. Imagine what would happen if the defense was allowed to show what they wanted to show. This is mumbo jumbo nonsense, nonsensical nonsense. It's just a bunch of bumbling weirdos, circle jerking to word salad, just to support their belief or theory that all of these things mean that Richard Allen is the bridge guy.
But at the end of the day, I've got to protect the integrity of the case, and I have a duty to make sure that Richard Allen has a fair trial and that also the state of Indiana has a fair trial. And so when we first released
Judge, did you hear that? We got another fair trial comment. We got to make sure the state of Indiana has a fair... We have to make sure the state of Indiana has a fair trial. Oh, you can't see what I'm watching?
Richard Allen has a fair trial and that also the state of Indiana has a fair trial. And so when we first released
we need the state of Indiana to have a fair trial.
Arrested him and filed the probable cause, it was sealed. I was concerned about Richard Allen's safety if this had gotten out because he was housed in the Carroll County Jail, and when they were witnesses, they were juveniles. Some of them weren't at this point.
Confession. Whose bright idea was it to book Rick under an alias? I was afraid that this would get out, and so we prevented it from getting out. It was intentional.
Because they had turned 18. I was concerned about that. I was concerned about Richard Allen's safety if this had gotten out because he was housed in the Carroll County Jail and the White County Jail and didn't really know how that was going to affect things. I thought it was important to keep this information from the public until I could have a judge order a redacted version. And so those are the main reasons why.
Until I could have the judge a redacted version. I had to keep it sealed for over a month before I could have the judge order a redacted version. So file a redacted version, you fucking loser.
I thought it was important to keep it out of the public. Now, there are people that disagree with me. Public has the right to know no matter what.
End of discussion then. The public has a right to know no matter what. End of discussion. Give us our fucking trial exhibits. We do have a right to know no matter what. So why does this not count?
To me, the integrity of the case trumps that. I think the FOIA...
To me, the integrity of my case trumps the Constitution, public access, transparency and open court, and the rights of the defendant. So I'm going to trump what I want, and the integrity of my investigation trumps the constitutional due process right of the defendant and trumps public access. Give us our fucking PCA, you motherfucker.
FOIA laws and the ARPA laws take that in consideration and why there are exceptions in that and why I was.
No. You violated the law and you still do
able
it.
to file it sealed. And so I don't disagree the public has a right to know. I disagree that the public has the right to know right now when they want to know.
Okay, so now, why can't we know now? You are denying everyone FOIA requests for agencies you don't even work for. He's God, Judgy, and soon he's going to be Judge God McClelland. Maybe one day Supreme Court Justice Judge God Dickolas McCletus.
I think that they have a right to know once the integrity of the case is protected.
Once our frame job is sufficiently sealed, once our frame job is sufficiently safe, once we've got all our ducks in a row and our story straight, then the public is entitled to their rights. We can only know after the final appeal.